My family abandoned me at 7 and with a note, saying, "You'll figure it out." Years later, they came crawling back. When I became a millionaire, so I took them to court. So when I was 17, I came home one day to find my house empty. No furniture, nothing. Just a note on the kitchen counter from my family, saying, "You'll figure it out." They'd packed up and moved 2 states away without even giving me a heads up. Seriously, it was brutal. I was left scratching my head, wondering what I'd done wrong. But deep down, I figured they were just tired of pretending to like me. My family life wasn't exactly a Disney movie. Like, when I turned 13, I baked my mom a birthday cake all by myself, and she just called it clumpy. At 15, I helped my brother study for finals, and he slammed the door in my face, calling me a know-it-all. At 16, I gave my dad my paycheck to help with bills, and he still called me useless. So yeah, I guess being useful wasn't the same as being liked. Finding out from the landlord that I had just a week to move out after they canceled the lease was a real kicker. I crashed at a friend's place for 3 nights, then ended up renting a storage container to sleep in. I'd sneak into the YMCA to shower and eat peanut butter straight from the jar 3 times a day. I used the library's free computers to hunt for jobs and acted like everything was cool. Eventually, I got a gig as a night shift server at a diner. The manager was tough but fair, and she'd even let me nap in the break room when I was dead tired. From there, things slowly started to get better. I saved every penny, watched YouTube videos about budgeting, and learned all I could. It was rough, but I made it through the first year. Then a diner regular offered me a temporary job cleaning office files, which paid way more than the diner. Those gigs led to more opportunities, and by 22, I was freelancing full-time. At 25, I started my own consultancy from a folding table with a borrowed laptop. By 27, I had a team working for me and a client list that blew my mind. At 29, I'd hit the millionaire milestone, not just social media rich, but debt-free, with real savings and a paid-off apartment. Despite everything, I'd never heard a word from my family during those tough years. Once my brother popped up on my suggested friends list online. He was married and still lived in the same state they'd run off to. I wondered if he'd told his wife about me, or if he pretended I never existed. I never hated them, just felt heartbroken. Therapy helped me stay grounded. I even made a list of people who supported me through the years, even when they didn't have to. Recently, a podcast interview I did about family estrangement went viral, racking up over 1 million views in just 4 days. My inbox flooded with messages of encouragement, and then there was this one email with the subject line, "You're still our daughter." It was from my mom. No sorry, just a vague paragraph about wanting to hear my side and maybe talking. Then my brother emailed saying, "We miss you, can we fix this?" I just stared at those emails, unsure. My therapist, Melissa, advised me to give it a week before replying, so I focused on my usual routines. But those emails weighed on me. My mom's message felt so businesslike, while my brother's seemed more heartfelt. I couldn't stop thinking about them. After 10 days, I finally replied to my brother with, "It's been 12 years. What changed?" He answered quickly, saying the podcast opened his eyes to what they'd done. He claimed he was just 15 and had no choice back then, that he'd thought about me over the years, but never had the guts to reach out. I wasn't totally buying it. Why contact me only after I had some public success? When I asked him that, he wrote back a longer email. He said they were having money problems, my parents' business had tanked, and they were drowning in bills. My stomach turned. That was the real reason. I didn't reply for another week. Then my mom sent another email with old family photos, like when I was a baby and times at the beach. At the end, she said, "We made mistakes. We want to make amends." I showed Melissa the email, and she reminded me I was in control, to set boundaries, and that I didn't owe them anything. But she also said closure, whether we reconciled or said a final goodbye, could help me move on. Part of me wanted to blow them off, but another part wanted answers. I decided to meet my brother first, without involving my parents. We picked a coffee shop in Chicago, about halfway for us. I flew out in the morning, checked into a hotel, and almost bailed a few times. But at the last minute, I went. When I saw him, we just kind of awkwardly sat there with our coffees, talking about nothing for a bit. Then he started apologizing, saying he didn't know they were going to leave me until it was too late. He said they saw me as the independent one, the strong one. They thought I'd be fine on my own. I told him how rough it really was, sleeping in a storage unit, living off peanut butter. He didn't know any of that. He showed me pictures of his family and talked about his job. And surprisingly, he didn't ask for money. As we left, he hugged me, and I let him, but didn't hug back. Later, I called Melissa, and she pointed out that he kept playing the victim card instead of owning up to his part. She was right. He was old enough to have checked in on me. That night, my mom called, using a number she must have gotten from my brother. She started crying, saying how proud she was of me and that I was special. I let her ramble, then asked why they left me. She said they were in debt and thought I'd do better on my own, maybe even find a better family through social services. I hung up, blocked her number, and threw my phone in frustration. The next morning, my dad emailed me for the first time in 12 years. No apology, just a list of their money troubles and a request for help. It was all too much. So not a single question or mention about my life and what they did. Anyway, I sent the email to Melissa with just the subject line, and bam, she called me right away, even though it was Sunday. We ended up chatting for an hour about setting boundaries and the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. We talked about helping versus enabling, and what I truly wanted versus what I thought I should want. By Monday morning, I knew what to do. I emailed my brother saying I was glad we met, that I got how tough things were for him when we were kids. I offered to have a relationship with him and his family, but with clear rules. No money, no loans, no financial support, and no interaction with our parents unless they owned up to their actions. His response was quick and pretty revealing. "I'm really disappointed, Ava," he wrote. "Our parents need help. Families should stick together. You're being selfish with your success." Cue all the guilt they drilled into me growing up. I didn't reply, though. Instead, I booked a session with Melissa and a trip to Bali. I needed to breathe. 3 days later, Daniel called, leaving a voicemail. He apologized for his email, said he got where I was coming from, and still wanted a relationship on my terms, promising to respect my boundaries. I listened twice, trying to figure out if he was being real or just shifting gears. I decided to give him another shot, but stayed cautious. I went to Bali anyway, 2 weeks of beach time, hiking through rice fields, and meditation. I needed some space. When I returned, my inbox was full with 6 more emails from Dad, each more desperate than the one before. I didn't even read them, just the subject lines. Daniel texted asking to talk again, and I agreed to a phone call. The call started okay. He apologized again for pushing. "I've been thinking a lot about what you told me," he said. "I'm in therapy now, too." That sounded genuine. He seemed less defensive. We chatted about his kids and my business, regular stuff. Then he brought up that our parents were visiting him the next weekend and asked if I'd consider seeing them, just for an hour, someplace public. My chest tightened. "I'm not ready for that, Daniel." He pushed a bit but backed down when I went quiet. After we hung up, I called Melissa. We had an emergency session that night, where she helped me see that my fear of seeing them wasn't about hatred, but about still craving their approval, still wanting them to love me, to be enough. It was pathetic, but it was true. I cried for an hour in her office. The next day, Daniel texted again. Said our mom cried all night after hearing I wouldn't meet them, that our dad was thinking of coming to my city anyway. I felt panicky and blocked Daniel's number on the spot. Then I told my assistant I was working from home for the week, ordered groceries online, and basically hid in my apartment like a scared kid. By Wednesday, the doorman called saying a couple was asking for me. They wouldn't give their names. I knew immediately. Told him I wasn't seeing visitors. 5 minutes later, my phone rang from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Dad. "Ava, we drove 8 hours to see you," he said angrily. "You're being childish. We deserve a chance to explain." I erased the message and shut off my phone. Thursday morning, someone was pounding on my door. I froze, heart racing, and peeked through the peephole. It was the Mom, my parents, standing there like they had every right. "Ava, please," my mom's voice came through. "We just want to talk. We love you. We're sorry," Dad added. I didn't open the door. Just sat against the wall, shaking. Eventually, they left. I called building security right away, told them not to let those people up again. The guard sounded worried, asked if I needed the police. "No, just don't let them up," I said. Then I called Melissa. She came over during her lunch break, brought a sandwich, and sat with me as I cried. She assured me I had every right to set boundaries and didn't owe them a meeting, that what they were doing was harassment, not reconciliation. After she left, I got an email from Daniel, furious. Said I'd humiliated our parents. They were stuck in a cheap motel they couldn't afford, desperate to see me. Said his wife needed surgery next month, and they hoped I could help. Accused me of being cruel. I didn't respond. By Friday morning, I realized I needed to get out of town for a bit. Booked a flight to see my friend Rachel in Portland. She's the one who helped me when I was homeless, let me crash on her couch when I had nowhere else to go. I trust her completely. As I was tossing clothes into a suitcase, my phone rang. Another unknown number. I ignored it. 10 minutes later, my doorman called, saying there was a woman downstairs having what looked like a medical issue, asking for me by name, claiming to be my mother. I felt sick. Told him to call an ambulance if she needed it. But I wasn't coming down. He sounded uncomfortable, but agreed. I finished packing and headed downstairs an hour later, checked the lobby carefully. No sign of them. I felt relieved, but also kind of guilty. The doorman gave me a weird look as I passed, told me the ambulance came, that the woman had chest pains, and was taken to Memorial Hospital. I nodded and hurried to my waiting Uber. At the airport, Daniel called again. I almost didn't pick up, but something made me do it. "Mom had a heart attack," he was crying. "She's in surgery. This is your fault for stressing her out." I hung up, called Melissa instead. She answered immediately. I told her what happened, asked if I was a horrible person. "Ava, listen to me," she said firmly. "You are not responsible for your mother's health. This feels like another manipulation tactic. Get on your plane and take care of yourself." I did. Spent the weekend with Rachel, told her everything. She remembered when my family abandoned me, how broken I was. She was furious for me. "They don't deserve a minute of your time," she said, pouring me another wine. "Not after what they did to you." It felt good to have someone so firmly on my side. Sunday night, I got an email from Dad saying Mom was stable, had a stent put in, would be released Tuesday. It ended with, "She's asking for you. Don't you think you've punished us enough?" I showed Rachel, and she rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. Told me this was classic guilt tripping. I knew she was right, but part of me still felt guilty. I flew home Monday and found flowers outside my apartment. The card read, "Please call us. We're staying at the Holiday Inn until Wednesday." No apology, no respect for boundaries, just another demand. I tossed the flowers in the trash. Tuesday morning, I got a text from an unknown number. A photo of Mom in a hospital bed, looking pale and small. The message said she might not have much time left, asking if I really wanted to live with that regret. I blocked the number and called Melissa. She advised taking a social media break, changing my number, maybe even staying with a friend for a while. I agreed, called my assistant, and told her I'd be working remotely for 2 weeks. Packed and sumamu. Other bag. Before I could leave, my doorman called again. Said there was a young woman downstairs asking for me with a small child, claiming to be my sister-in-law. I felt cornered. These people wouldn't quit. I told him to send her up and decided it was time to face this head-on. The woman who knocked on my door looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, holding a sleeping toddler on her shoulder. "I'm Rachel," she said quietly, "Daniel's wife. I came alone because I wanted to talk without all the family drama." I hesitantly let her in and offered her water, which she gratefully accepted. She set her sleeping daughter on my couch, tucked her in, and then we sat at my kitchen table. She started talking. "I only found out about you 3 years ago," she confessed. "Daniel told me you ran away at 17 and cut ties with the family. I always thought it was odd but never pushed. Hearing your podcast was a shock. I confronted him and he finally came clean. I just listened, unsure what to believe now." Rachel seemed genuine. "I'm horrified by what they did to you," she continued. "I made Daniel reach out, but I didn't know they asked you for money. I'm both embarrassed and angry about that. Yes, I need surgery for a thyroid issue, but we have insurance. Your parents are the ones financially struggling, not us." I asked why she came. She looked me in the eyes. "You deserve the entire truth," she said. "Your parents told everyone you abandoned the family, were mentally unstable, stole money before disappearing, and they spent years searching for you. Lies to hide what they did." I felt like I'd been punched. "How do you know this is true?" She pulled out her phone and showed me old Facebook posts. My mom asking for prayers to find her troubled daughter. My dad saying I took their savings and ran. Posts about hiring private investigators, checking homeless shelters, all crafted to make them look like victims. All dated years after they ditched me. Rachel apologized for unknowingly being part of it. Said she confronted my parents, too. They admitted everything when she threatened to expose them because their lies were falling apart. And my podcast had folks asking questions they couldn't answer. Her daughter woke up, a cute little girl with curly hair. "This," Rachel continued. So Rachel quietly told me about her little girl, Lily, who's 3, and that she's got another baby on the way. She really wants her kids to know their aunt, but only if I'm into that. No pressure or guilt, just an open door if I ever feel like stepping through. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment for hours, just trying to wrap my head around everything. I called Melissa and shared what Rachel told me. Melissa wasn't shocked. She said that people who abuse others often twist the truth and make up versions where they're the ones who are wronged. Creepy, right? She asked me what I wanted to do next, but honestly, I had no clue. Then my dad emailed me that night, but this time he was all angry and threatening. He went on about how if I spread lies online, they'd sue me for defamation, claimed they had proof I stole from them, and said they'd go public with their side unless I deleted the podcast and made a public apology. They even demanded money for damaging their reputation. I sent all that to Melissa and my lawyer Marcus. Marcus called me right away, saying it's all empty threats and that the truth is a solid defense against defamation. He told me to save everything but not to reply, assuring me he'd handle it if anything came up, which he doubted would happen. People who really plan on suing don't usually announce it beforehand. The next day, I got a call from my brother Neil, but I let it go to voicemail. He sounded super stressed, saying, "Ava, Rachel told me she visited you. Our parents are furious and saying awful things about her now, too." I'm worried they might do something extreme. Please call me back on Rachel's phone, not mine. I had no idea what to believe anymore. I called Marcus again, and he suggested meeting Daniel and Rachel in a public place with him there as my lawyer, just to hear them out. Even though I wasn't thrilled, I agreed, and we set up a lunch at a restaurant near Marcus's office for the next day. They showed up on time, both looking stressed and exhausted. Rachel had a bruise on her arm she'd try to hide, and Daniel couldn't make eye contact. When Marcus introduced himself as my lawyer, Daniel flinched, but we sat down, ordered some coffee, and they started talking. Their story was worse than I imagined. My parents had been living off Daniel for years, moving into his house, taking his money for emergencies, and criticizing his parenting while watching his kids. When Rachel called them out about me, my dad grabbed her arm hard enough to leave marks, and Daniel kicked them out. Now they were staying in a motel, constantly calling him, and even showing up at his work. I just sat there, listening to everything and watching my brother fall apart as he talked about how our parents had manipulated him his whole life, making him believe that I abandoned them. He admitted he was too scared to question their lies and had been caught in their web for 12 years. He was terrified they might hurt Rachel or the kids. Marcus asked smart questions about their financial ties, bank accounts, and whether our parents had keys to their house. Daniel answered everything, saying they co-signed his mortgage. His dad was still on his bank account since college. They had spare keys and knew all his passwords. Marcus took notes, sometimes glancing at me, and by the end, I felt exhausted but clearer about things. This wasn't just my battle anymore. Daniel and Rachel were victims too, in their own messed-up way. Marcus suggested they get their own lawyer, gave them a contact, and told them to change their locks, passwords, and bank accounts ASAP. They nodded, looking overwhelmed but grateful. As we were leaving, Daniel hugged me, and I hugged him back. Not quite forgiveness, but a start, acknowledging that we were both messed up by the same people. Maybe we could help each other heal. That night, I got a bunch of crazy texts from my parents' numbers. Accusations, threats, guilt trips. I blocked them all and then called Rachel to check if they were okay. She said they'd changed the locks, stayed with friends the night before, and were looking into a restraining order. I felt a bit better but still worried. The next morning, Rachel called me hysterically. Their house had been broken into. They took Lily's baby photos, important papers, and Daniel's laptop and left a note saying, "Family matters should stay in the family." I told her to call the police and said I'd meet them at their house. On my way, I called Marcus. When I got there, the cops were already there, taking statements in their messy living room. Drawers were emptied, papers everywhere. Daniel was on the couch with his head in his hands, and Rachel was pointing out what was missing. I told the officer I was family there to help, but he seemed skeptical that grandparents would break in, asking, "Are you sure they didn't just use a key? Maybe it's a misunderstanding." Rachel showed the officer her bruised arm and explained about the threats and harassment, but he didn't seem convinced, saying it'd be hard to prove anything without evidence. After the cops left, we cleaned up together and found more missing stuff. 2 albums, financial documents, and the spare car key. Daniel looked defeated and blamed himself for not protecting his family better or searching for me harder. I didn't disagree, but I didn't add to his guilt either. We were beyond that now. Marcus showed up as we were finishing up, looked around, and said we needed to document everything. Breaking and entering was a serious crime, so we should stay somewhere else for a few days. He'd help us file for emergency restraining orders in the morning. We agreed, too tired to argue. Rachel packed their bags while Daniel and I secured the house, changed locks again, checked windows, and talked about getting security cameras. It felt surreal to take precautions against our own parents, but necessary. They'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. As we were leaving, Daniel got a text from our dad saying, "We're watching you." He showed it to me, shaking. I took a screenshot and sent it to Marcus, then made a decision. I told them they were coming to stay with me. My building had security cameras and a doorman who knew not to let our parents in. They accepted gratefully. That night, the four of us had takeout in my living room, while Lily played with some toys Rachel had packed. We quietly talked about what to do next, about restraining orders, police reports, changing phone numbers, and moving houses. It wasn't the reunion I'd imagined, sitting with the brother who'd let me be pushed away, his wife who'd believed lies about me, and their daughter who was innocent in all this. But it felt right, like we were finally facing the truth together, and maybe, just maybe, we could build something new from the mess our parents left us with. Next morning, Marcus called to say he filed emergency restraining orders for all of us, and we needed to go to court next week to make them permanent. He also reported the break-in to a detective he knew who was taking it more seriously than the initial officers. He said we should stick together until this was resolved. I agreed and told my assistant I'd be working from home indefinitely due to a family emergency. She got it and adjusted my schedule. I set up a workspace in my guest room for Daniel since he had to work remotely, while Rachel and Lily turned my living room into a playground with pillow forts and cartoons. It was weird having people in my space. I'd lived alone for years and liked my quiet routines. But there was something comforting about the noise, too. Lily's laughter, Rachel's quiet humming while folding laundry, Daniel's typing from the other room. It felt like family, not the kind that had left me behind, but maybe the kind we could become. Later, my doorman called up about a flower delivery. I asked him to check the card first, and it read, "We know where you all are. This isn't over." I told him to refuse it and call the police if the delivery person wouldn't take it back, then rang Marcus again. He added this to our case, saying it strengthened our restraining order request and that we were doing everything right. I didn't tell Daniel or Rachel about the flowers. No need to stress them out more. Instead, I ordered extra groceries, made dinner for everyone, and played with Lily to try to bring a bit of normalcy to our weird situation. But that night, after everyone was asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen and let myself feel everything. The fear, anger, grief, and strange hope. I cried quietly into a dish towel so nobody would hear. The next morning, Rachel found me making coffee and asked if I was okay. I lied and said yes. She didn't buy it, so she sat down and said, "It's okay not to be okay." She admitted she wasn't either. Daniel cried in the shower, thinking no one could hear, and Lily kept asking when they could go home. It was a horrible situation, but she was grateful we were facing it together. I looked at her, this woman I barely knew who was now part of my life, and asked why she came to me that first day, why she chose to believe me over the family she'd known for years. She gave a sad smile and said she always felt something was off about my parents, their stories, and how they controlled Daniel. The podcast confirmed her suspicions, and she couldn't let her daughters grow up thinking it was okay to abandon a child. We hugged for the first time, and it was awkward, but genuine. It wasn't quite friendship yet, but understanding. A shared resolve to break the cycle of mistreatment that had hurt us all. The next few days fell into a routine. Working, cooking, playing with Lily, checking in with Marcus, and jumping at unexpected noises. We were living in a weird mix of daily life and underlying stress. We were safe, but it didn't quite feel like it yet. So, things were in a weird kind of limbo for our family. We were trying to piece things together and learn what healing really meant. On Friday, Marcus called us with some big news. The detective managed to get their hands on some security footage from a gas station near Daniel's place. It showed our parents' car parked there right around the time of the break-in. We had a court date for a restraining order set for Monday, and Marcus seemed pretty confident that we'd get it approved. We all felt a bit of relief, but were still on edge, waiting for the next shoe to drop. And it did that night. A brick was smashed through Daniel's car window in the parking garage. This time there was no note, but the message was pretty clear. The building's security tapes caught a guy in a baseball cap, deliberately turning away from the cameras. We couldn't prove it was our dad, but in our guts, we knew. We filed another police report and added it to our growing case file, trying our hardest not to let Lily know how scared we were. Sunday night rolled around, and we all sat together, brainstorming how we were going to handle court. What should we wear? What should we say? What evidence should we bring along? How could we talk about our family history without sounding nuts? How could we make the judge see that this wasn't just a one-time thing, but a series of escalating events? It felt surreal discussing our parents like this, as if they were strangers, or even dangerous strangers, but still had our DNA. As we were deep in discussion, my phone pinged with an email from my mom. The subject line read, "Last opportunity." I almost deleted it without reading, but something made me open it. It was just one line. "If you go to court tomorrow, you'll regret it for the rest of your life." I showed it to Marcus, who was having dinner with us. He took a picture for our records and told me not to respond, saying it would only make our case stronger. That night, none of us really slept well. I kept checking the locks and listening for any strange noises, wondering what my parents might do next. Was I overreacting? Or maybe underreacting? I couldn't help but think about how I had gone from being a neglected kid to a successful businesswoman, now hiding from the very people who brought me into this world. Monday morning came along with a strange kind of calm. We dressed in business casual, to look respectable and trustworthy. Rachel arranged for a friend to watch Lily. We all drove to the courthouse in separate cars, just to be safe, and met Marcus on the courthouse steps. He looked confident with his suitcase, assuring us he'd handled plenty of cases like this before and that our evidence was solid. He said judges take threats seriously and that we'd be protected. As we walked into the courthouse, I saw my parents by the entrance. They looked older than I remembered, almost smaller. My mom spotted me and started to move toward me, but my dad held her back. They just watched as we walked past them, not saying or doing anything, just staring with a mix of anger and something that looked like fear. Inside, we checked in at security and followed Marcus to the right courtroom. We sat together on a bench, waiting for our case to be called. I could feel my parents behind us. I could almost hear their whispered conversation, but I kept my gaze forward, focusing on my breathing. When the judge called our case, we stood up, walked forward, and took our positions. Marcus laid out all our evidence: the break-in, the threatening texts, the flowers, the brick, the email, and the history of neglect and manipulation. The judge was really paying attention, asking questions, and looking at our parents with increasing concern. When it was their turn, my parents stood up. No lawyer, just them. My dad spoke first, saying we were blowing things out of proportion, that they just wanted to reconnect, that they hadn't broken any laws, and that they just wanted to make amends. My mom nodded along, grabbing a tissue now and then to wipe her eyes. Then the judge asked them straight out about leaving me when I was 17. My dad started talking about troublesome kids and tough choices, trying to justify their actions, but the judge cut him off and asked point-blank if they left a young child alone to move to another state. My dad mumbled something about money issues, and the judge did not look pleased. After hearing both sides, the judge granted us the restraining orders for 3 years. No contact, 0 approaching our homes or offices, no messaging through others, and any violations would mean immediate arrest. My parents seemed blindsided, like they couldn't wrap their heads around what was happening. My mom called my name softly as we left the courtroom, But I didn't turn back. I just kept walking, feeling a bit lighter with each step. Not completely healed, but it was a start, a real boundary with real consequences. Outside, Marcus shook our hands, saying we did great, that the orders were solid, and that we should call him right away if anything happened. We thanked him, feeling a mix of shock and relief, like we'd survived some natural disaster and were just now stepping into the sunlight. On the courthouse steps, Daniel gave me a heartfelt hug and apologized, his voice cracking. He was sorry for not protecting me back then, for not finding me sooner, for believing their lies and dragging all this chaos back into my life. I hugged him back, telling him we'd be okay, that we had each other now, and we could build something new and better. As we headed to our cars, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but when I checked, it sent a chill down my spine. It was a picture of Lily playing at her friend's house, oblivious to the fact she was being watched. Under the photo were 4 words: "This is not over." I showed it to Daniel and his face went white. He called Rachel, who was already on her way to pick up Lily, and told them to meet us at my place. Then I called Marcus from the car, my hands shaking so much I could barely hold the phone. He told me to forward the text to him right away, head straight home, and that he'd call the police and meet us there. He told me to stay calm, but vigilant. The drive home felt endless, and I was paranoid, checking my mirrors constantly, afraid my parents were following me. When I finally got to my building's garage, I sat in my car for a minute, just trying to gather myself before going upstairs to Ace, Daniel, and Rachel, who needed me to be strong. I found them already inside, Rachel holding Lily tight, both looking scared and confused, and Daniel pacing, running his hands through his hair. I showed them the text, and Rachel started crying, worried about her baby being watched. She said she'd never forgive herself if anything happened to Lily. Daniel wrapped them both in a hug, looking more determined than I'd ever seen him. Marcus showed up about 20 minutes later with 2 police officers who took our statements, checked out the text, and made some calls. They said they'd send a patrol car to check out the friend's place, try to track the phone number, and beef up patrols around my building. They said all the right things, but I felt they didn't quite grasp how unpredictable and desperate my parents could be. After the cops left, we gathered in my living room, trying to figure out our next move. Rachel suggested staying at a hotel under a different name, while Daniel thought maybe heading to his cousin's place a few states away would be smart. I was just growing more and more frustrated, thinking about how we did everything by the book, went through the legal system, got restraining orders, and yet my parents were still terrorizing us. I suddenly stood up, feeling a fire inside me. "I'm done running and hiding," I declared. "I'm tired of letting them dictate how I live my life. They stole my childhood. I'm not letting them take my adulthood too." Daniel looked at me like I'd gone off the deep end, asking what I planned to do. Honestly, I didn't know, but I knew we couldn't keep going on like this. That night, we took turns keeping watch while the others tried to sleep. I was up first, sitting by my living room window with all the lights off, watching the street below. Around 2 a.m., I saw my dad's old Buick circling the block a few times before parking across the street. I snapped some pictures with my phone, then woke Daniel. We watched as our father sat in his car, staring up at my building, not approaching, not technically breaking the restraining order, but letting us know he was there, watching and waiting. In the morning, I sent the photos to Marcus. He said it was concerning but not legally a violation since my dad stayed in the car. He promised to keep documenting everything and talk to the investigator again. I hung up feeling frustrated at the limits of the legal system. Restraining orders are just pieces of paper, and they can't stop someone hell-bent on causing harm. Rachel and Daniel decided to take Lily to a hotel for a few days that had good security. I helped them pack, hugged them goodbye, and promised to check in every few hours. After they left, I sat alone in my apartment, feeling oddly calm, like I'd hit a breaking point. I called Melissa, told her everything, and asked what she thought I should do. She paused for a moment and then asked me something that hit me hard. What do you really want from your parents? Not what I didn't want or what I feared, but what did I actually want? I realized I'd never thought about it that way before. After we hung up, I made a list. I wanted to live without fear, to keep a relationship with my brother and his family, to stop feeling responsible for my parents' actions, and to be free from the past. Nowhere on that list was reconciliation with my parents. There wasn't a hint of forgiveness. No one seemed to understand why they did what they did. So, one afternoon, I just wanted to break free from my parents, and feeling a bit bold, I shot them an email. It was short and to the point. I know you're keeping tabs on my place, and I know it's not going to stop. Let's talk one more time. Just us. Tomorrow, noon. The coffee shop on 8th Street. No cops, no lawyers. After that, leave us alone forever. I hit send before I could chicken out. I didn't tell Daniel, Rachel, Marcus, or Melissa because this was something I had to handle on my own. I wasn't naive enough to think my parents would suddenly become reasonable, but it was time to confront them on my own turf and say my piece. My dad replied within minutes, just saying they'd be there. No drama, just confirmation. I spent the rest of the day thinking about what I wanted to say, what they needed to hear, and how I was going to set some boundaries. That night, I slept like a rock, probably because I felt some weight lift after making the decision. The next morning, I dressed sharp, not to impress them, but to feel strong and confident. I took an Uber and got to the coffee shop 15 minutes early, picking a table in the back corner where I could see the entrance but wasn't immediately noticeable. I ordered a coffee I didn't actually want and waited, feeling surprisingly calm. They showed up right on time, looking older and more worn out than they did in court. My mom spotted me first and gave my dad a nudge. They approached me cautiously, like I was some wild animal ready to run. We just sat there staring at each other for a while, like strangers who somehow shared a lifetime of influence. I started the conversation, laying it all out. I didn't call them to make amends, give them money, or hear their excuses. I just needed them to understand it was over. They'd lost. Not just in court, but they'd lost Daniel, lost their grandkids, and any hope of being part of our lives. And if they didn't back off, I was ready to expose all their threats. My dad started to interrupt, but I shut him down. I showed them their messages on my phone, everything I'd saved. I said I'd send it all to everyone they knew if they tried to contact us again. My mom started crying, saying they just wanted the family back, that they made mistakes. My dad got angry, accusing me of turning my brother against them and owing them for raising me. I laughed it off. Seriously, they thought they deserved gratitude for doing the bare minimum until ditching me at 17? I left them with a final warning. Push me, and I'd make their lives very difficult. As I walked away, my mom asked if I really hated them. I told her it wasn't hate. I just felt nothing for them now. They were strangers, and that was their loss, not mine. Leaving the coffee shop, I felt lighter than I had in ages. I called Daniel to tell him what happened. He was upset at first that I met them alone, but was glad I stood up to them. Later, I packed a bag and decided to stay with Daniel and his family at their hotel for a bit, just to be safe. When I got there, Lily ran up and called me Auntie Ava for the first time, and I almost cried. Rachel hugged me, saying she was proud. Daniel just squeezed my shoulder in that brotherly way, no words needed. We stayed in limbo for a while, expecting my parents to make a move, but nothing happened. No calls, no texts, just silence. A week later, Daniel and Rachel returned home, changed their locks, and started looking for a new place nearer to me. Life slid back to normal. After a couple of weeks, things were peaceful, and Marcus kept us updated. Apparently, my parents had gone back home, and the restraining orders were still in force. Daniel found a new job in my area. Lily started preschool nearby, and they bought a house close to me. Every Sunday, we'd cook together, building new traditions with our chosen family. Then, 6 months after the coffee showdown, I got a letter through Marcus. At first, I thought about tossing it unread, but curiosity won. It was short, admitting they messed up big time and were seeking counseling. They said they'd honor the restraining orders and hoped one day I'd be open to a real apology. I showed it to Daniel. He got the same letter. We talked over dinner, wondering if it was genuine or changed anything. But we decided to move forward, focusing on our own healing. I keep that letter in my desk, not ready to forgive or reconcile, but as proof that they finally recognized my right to set boundaries. Last week, we celebrated Lily's 4th birthday at my place, with balloons, cake, and presents. Rachel captured it all in photos while Daniel grilled on the balcony. Friends dropped by. The place was bursting with laughter and love. I took a moment in the kitchen, watching Daniel spin Lily around and thinking of the note I'd found 12 years ago. "You'll figure it out." And I did. Maybe not how they expected, but I found out what family and love should be. Life isn't perfect. I still have trust issues, therapy sessions, and occasionally jump when the doorbell rings. But we're healing, building something new from the shattered past, something stronger and real. People ask if I'll ever reconcile with my folks or let them see Lily. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe someday, maybe never. But I'm defined by what I've built, not by what they did to me. It's about who I've chosen to be and the family I've decided to make.